There's a strong mission behind your life with Athletic Brewing, but before you ever had the thought or the idea about that, what do you think your mission in life was?
I I honestly don't think I had much of a mission in life. It sadly I think athletic gave me a lot of purpose. I would say I I'd been somewhat drifting in life, and even at times I might have hit fast forward if given the option. Difficult years, stressful work periods. I think there was a lot of emptiness there. I was definitely like working for life and like mostly working for the future, which is kind of a sad way to be. I like since founding Athletic, it's definitely been living for the present and loving the present, which has been a huge change for me.
I know you quit drinking about 11 years ago, but before that, what did your relationship with alcohol used to look like?
Yeah, so 11 years ago, earlier this week, so just past that. And honestly, the best decision I've ever made, and not as a necessarily not as a judgment on alcohol, as a judgment on like alcohol as a fit for me. It as a like the key areas in my life that I was really I guess like going back to when I decided to stop drinking. I was about to turn 30. I was 6 months from getting married. That's a point where, passing a key age plus like a real life change where I was thinking about the future, what kind of husband, what kind of potential parent I wanted to be. And I was honestly drinking and socializing all the time and working so hard that I was thinking about like what's important to me. And I imagine myself being a much better husband and father without any alcohol in my life. I was having a lot of trouble finding where that line was. And then a more productive professional in my financial career without alcohol. Um, Better friend, family member, everything to my extended family, probably without alcohol. And a healthier person who's going to live a lot longer, be a lot healthier. And so, like, on every key element of my life, I realized alcohol was a ceiling on those things. Um, Before that, alcohol was, I think there was like a relative amount of like some good alcohol brought to my life, socializing, networking, things like that. I was living such a stressful life that like I'm thankful for those like fun moments where I was like with friends and everything. Um, and but I was also very social, and it, I had a real problem like just having one drink or being moderate or calling it a night. I was always up for being the last one out. I was very social and I loved that, and so inevitably like drank too much, too many nights of the week. I had 3 or 4 work dinners a week plus social things, and so it overall was I had trouble drawing where that line was. I honestly think if athletic had existed at that point, I actually probably wouldn't have had a problem with with alcohol. When I stopped drinking, I really didn't have any trouble like avoiding alcohol. Like I really had almost no temptation. It was such an easy decision for me, except when I was in those social situations, there wasn't an offering there. So like I think I would have had no problem going out and having one drink had there been other offerings that I could hold in my hand and have fun and hang out with. The problem was there was no option to be social without alcohol. And so inevitably then I would have 2 to 10 drinks every single time I went out.
Do you think alcohol played more of a role in your personal life or your professional life?
Um, I I think it was about equal. Some positives and some negatives where and I think one of the most important realizations for me is that like the alcohol as a functional ingredient itself didn't serve me at all. Like it was just, I loved being in the moments, and alcohol actually had nothing to do with those moments. And like when you walk into a bar and you first see a friend or a family member you're so excited to see, that's not like alcohol having making that moment fun. It is just like how great that person in that moment is. And like when you watch your sports team win, very often you have an alcohol drink in your hand, but like that win is just as sweet with a non-alcoholic good drink. And um, so very often I thought alcohol was like a glue to a lot of the fun moments in my life, whether those were personal or professional. And like, so personal for fun and whatever. Work was networking and building my network, like working with colleagues and analysts and idea dinners and stuff outside of work. Um, at the same time, it I realized in both that alcohol actually didn't have anything to do with it, and then the detractions were also very similar. So personally, it's like very easy to get overserved or not feel great or not have as good quality time with people if anyone is overserved. And then professionally, like even 1 to 2 drinks affects sleep. You miss workouts, you're not as sharp, you don't do work when you get so once I stopped drinking, I would go out to a great work dinner and then come home and have a completely clear head and often do some of my best work of the day at night and be totally locked in. Um, if you go out and have 2 drinks, that option's off the table and you don't sleep as well. And then often you're hungover the next day and have a less productive day at work. And so it's kind of this like vortex where when I stopped drinking, I was like, oh, this is like a virtuous cycle. I feel great. I'm more productive. I'm working out better, can still do everything I love, and just don't need to deal with this distraction.
Yeah, I think that's an important point that you made about how it's not the alcohol that we truly want it. It's the alcohol that's a bridge to the environment and the surroundings that we have. That's what we truly crave. So you
Hmm.
make the decision that you're gonna stop drinking. How long did it take after that moment for you to have the realization and the experience of, there really aren't any other good non-alcoholic beverages in the market?
Yeah. Well, I will say I'm not necessarily like the most self-aware person, and I'm really glad to have like an incredible wife who I knew for 13 years before we got married, and knows me incredibly well, and so she helps provide a lot of reflection, and then great colleagues in my old career and friends who um, I when I like so she helped me come to this decision. Then when I told colleagues, I was like, I don't think alcohol is serving me personally or professionally. I'm going to cut it out and like would love you guys to help support that decision. And they were like, oh, you should talk to this person, this person, this person. And like people in the room that I really respected were really helpful in helping me connect those next steps, which made it really obvious to me. Um, so that some education there, but it was like almost immediate for me that I was like, oh, this is like a permanent decision and I'm going down this path. It was very hard though because there were no options. So I it was almost immediate. I had no change in cadence of like stopping drinking and going to bars and restaurants still 3+ nights a week. So I had no problem being in a sports bar and not drinking, except for like how bad the options are. It's like I'm here, I'd love to spend money, have something delicious, and it wasn't there. Um, and so that was like kind of obvious to me in the beginning, but like I I had never ever fashioned myself as an entrepreneur and would never think I was qualified to potentially even think about meeting that product need. I just started griping about it to people and being like, how are there 10,000 craft breweries and no one has made an amazing non-alcoholic beer yet? And then I tried to order them from all over the globe and found out that it. I would say the act like voicing the idea to my wife took 15 months after I stopped drinking. But I was definitely griping about it a lot in that period.
Yeah, I know your wife played an integral part in cultivating that excitement for you about your ideas with athletic brewing. But what I also appreciate and like most about your journey is that you didn't just jump right into this idea. It was very methodical at the start, where you originally had the idea in 2014, and then from December 2014 to December 2016, you spent that time building out a business plan. What did the work and the process look like for building out that plan?
Yeah. So as a backdrop, I had a very viable long-term economic job that, I found it intellectually challenging and I liked the people I worked with. And so I was on a path of a career. I wouldn't necessarily say it like brought me huge fulfillment, but it was like a great economic career that no one leaves that firm. So it just never crossed my mind. But that being said, I dreaded work. I was definitely like working for the rest of my life, like everything outside of work. And for the first time in my life, it was like one of those things where it's like a school project you absolutely fall in love with and wish would never end. And I would find myself on the weekends or at nights, like working on the frame of Athletic Brewing that had a placeholder name at the time. And I would absolutely lose myself in time. And I would like be reading brewing textbooks and I'd be trying to solve this really difficult problem or working on the potential future financial modeling and like thinking about construction and like what equipment we needed and like who would I want to work with and all the different challenges of all the different parts of the business and educating myself were so like exhilarating. Like time would just fly by and all of a sudden it would be midnight and I'd have to go to sleep and then I'd just wake up at 4 o'clock the next morning and start working on it before work. And it was like this energy for a project I'd never had before. And but that being said, it was an incredibly dumb financial move to like leave the job I had to like take this chance. And I think also part of what had happened over that time too is like my journey kept going on as like um someone who was like learning a lot about themselves, my health, and I was um when I stopped drinking in 2013, it was like very often, probably 5 nights a week, I'd have at least one or two drinks, and like that dims the lights to some extent. And when I stopped drinking, I had this intellectual curiosity in the evenings that I hadn't had since I was like a teenager. And I started like just like reading a lot more books and like watching educational YouTubes on different topics all of a sudden. And like it was like the intellectual lights had gone back on in my life. And so I found myself on this like personal improvement journey on both like health, intellect, fitness, relationships, career. And there's this virtual circle. And so I got a lot more passionate about like my own personal improvement during that time too. And I also helped a few other people connect the dots and make similar choices in their own life, like from different family members to close friends. And that work was really rewarding to me. So I was doing the like actual economic or not economic, like the fully well-rounded business planning of athletic brewing. But also I had this personal journey going on where became more and more passionate about kind of like the health and productivity of the country in a way. And I thought by like when before I stopped drinking, so 10 years ago, there were no options if you wanted to go out and be social and be at bars and restaurants and not drink. It was like if you were enjoying those experiences, it was alcohol's the path. And I wanted to make it just a choice. Like I'm not saying anything necessarily against alcohol. I'm just saying people now have a really exciting choice. And I thought by making a choice, I could have a untold impact on the health and productivity of the country and so many people's lives just by making an option available. And when like that realization hit me, like probably a year and a half into business planning is when it just went to the totally next level and I was out the door on my job pretty quickly after that.
Your wife again, yeah, plays an integral part. She's the one who pushes you to quit your job at the hedge
Yep.
fund point 72. And you've said that you had 3 years of expenses budgeted so you could go all in on focusing on athletic brewing. So take me back to those first days. You wake up, you just quit your job, and it's like, all right, day one, like this is what I'm working on. What did that beginning look like?
So it was a pretty dramatic decision to quit. All my colleagues were super supportive. And then all of a sudden I went from waking up with like 500 emails a day to waking up with no contact to anyone. And then not only that, like my phone and I, I went from a world where I'd have probably thousands of emails a day and 200 brokers covering our desk, calling all day to a world where I was getting absolutely no inbound information or like contact or anything. And not only that, when I reached out to people, I mostly did not get any responses also. So I I was, of course, extremely excited to get going and jumped right in. And there was like no structure at all to what I was doing next, which was a weird feeling. And um, so I like started working on refining the business plan. So like taking the plans I'd been working on, putting them in an actual document and plan and pitch, and then a structure of what I wanted the next like 3 years to look like in terms of building the foundation of the business. And then I started to think about like how to actually make the beer. And so I was like, oh, we're going to contract brew. And like, so I had done the research on all these contract brewers and put dots all over a map that I hung up on my wall. And me and my wife were planning this grand road trip where we're going to visit all these contract brewers. And the assumption in my mind was like everyone's open for business. And I'm just going to like choose who I want to work with. And so we had like planned this whole grand road trip where I was going to visit all these contract brewers. And I actually only got one phone call meeting, and then that was a very quick no. And so, but like no other meetings, no need for a road trip. And so that was like very much a dead end. And I was like, okay, like I'm going to maybe try to find a more technical brewing partner before I really like take many more next steps. And that ended up being way harder than I would have thought also. Really, I, I went from a world where every outbound phone call I made got picked up on the first ring and like, like the world was like so responsive to me. And I was not, I was an executor and an operations person. Like I was not a salesperson whatsoever. And I was like really putting myself out there, like cold calling people, going to conferences, having like trying to educate people from the ground up on this. And there was like absolutely no interest. So it was like hundreds of no's from brewers also. And so I eventually, over a course of 5 months, got to our co-founder, John, who had reached out from a job board posting I'd done. And thank goodness for John, because he was like the first person out of hundreds who like really understood the idea and what I was trying to achieve. And so like real credit to him. But those first 6 months were incredibly bleak. And looking back, like I had so much fun doing it. Like I never once questioned what I was doing and should I go back. I had really burnt the boats in many ways. And I was going to give myself 2 to 3 years at this no matter what. But it, looking back on that with reflection, it should have been even so much darker than it was. Like I was like literally in an alley with no options and no one talking to me.
How do you think being an amateur rather than being a beverage professional already within the industry, how do you think that played to your advantage?
I think in many ways it's a huge advantage. So in an established category, you'd probably want to be coming in as like with knowledge of it. If you're going to jump right in and compete on a competitive category against existing frameworks and dynamics and distribution systems and stuff, it's potentially better to have a lot of that industry experience before you get out there and start making expensive, inefficient mistakes. But like where we were and the resistance that was going to come to the category, it was really good. We came in with a more of an outsider's perspective. We would have never launched the brand on e-commerce had I been in the industry for 20 years, which ended up being like an enormous data and trial advantage in the industry. And then so I think bringing outsider perspectives and more importantly, like just not knowing how hard it was going to be. So like a lot of the people that had said no to me to join the team, I think were coming with a really well supported like knowledge base of how difficult the endeavor was going to be. I think coming in with delusional optimism probably served me very well because it was like just learning every lesson along the way. And I was in it for the long haul. And so I had plenty of time to do it. Of course, we were moving fast, but I think it served me very well. And in, a lot of industries are very sleepy. And if people work in an industry for their whole career, it's a big echo chamber. And it can be very disruptive when people who are ambitious come in from the outside um, with big intentions to grow it.
Being naive can definitely be a benefit in many ways. I think the hardest part of anything is that starting point where you're at a dead weight position and you're just trying to break through that wall and actually feel like you're in the game. How long into working on Athletic Brewing, you mentioned finding your co-founder John. How long into starting this did it start to feel like, all right, this isn't just an idea anymore, but now I got some pieces in place to actually start building this thing out?
Yeah, it's so funny. And we had I don't think we've had like total unwavering faith in how big this trend is going to be, even from pre-launch. And I think we knew so strongly, like inside ourselves, that like this was such an unmet need in the world and such a blue ocean opportunity that we were really thinking big right from the start. So I had already ordered all the very large brewing equipment with basically my whole life savings before I raised like $1 of outside capital. And so that was a like, I'm all in and this equipment is coming regardless whether we like it or not. And had put deposits on construction and everything. So I was building a non-alcoholic brewery. Um, and, um, and then it, but it, there was every part of our business was from a standstill. It wasn't just production. It was like, um, there was no marketing for the category. So, like, when I first set up sampling booths and was talking to customers, like, people had no idea about the category. Why would they ever consider drinking non-alcoholic beer? And then on a sales side and like distribution side, like there was no interest in like taking the products in, no interest in having more non-alcoholic beer at retail. So I had to really like literally walk into all those places and spend real time talking to decision makers, tasting them on the beer. And it was like one by one selling in person, where like so much sales in the world these days is like scalable software oriented solutions. I was like literally driving around all over New England, talking to people face to face. Um, and then that's not even to like cover fundraising. Fundraising, we got an incredible amount of no's. I did 120 meetings. There's a period of almost 3 months where I didn't get a single yes, which was like a pretty dark valley. And so it was really like every vertical was getting going from no. But like I'm very thankful for all that now because I learned so much in that period coming from an industry outsider, but like having to have so many conversations, having to go so deep on my business and be so convincing on it. And it really also forced us to get to a point of quality on the product where there's a lot of products launching now where they're launching into a very well established category where there's a lot of receptivity to try new things, so the hurdle is very low and a lot of these products are getting out the door without much thought at all on product quality. And like, because the hurdles are lower to these companies launching, a lot of companies have already come and gone because they haven't done the work that we did. Um, I feel really thankful that we've done the work and we've earned some really tough education.
Why do you think you had that feeling like you thought this was going to work? Was that more data analytics driven, or was that kind of just a deep emotional gut feeling that you had?
Definitely some of both. So I had my own personal lived experience where I was the target customer, normal, healthy, modern, busy adult who very obviously misses great tasting beer in most of my modern busy life. So that was and I was really confident that was just a very normal adult experience. Like most people want to be a little bit healthier, sleep a little better, be a little more present and productive, and this beer can help do that. So that was like super obvious in my mind. Um, and then, so I started mentioning to friends and family, and no matter how much people drink, like from people who barely ever drink to people who drink a ton, everyone was saying, "Yeah, that makes sense." Like I would drink that with some regularity. Where non-alcoholic beer was 0.3% of the beer market, to have such a wide range of people say they would drink it with some regularity was very promising. And then I started running surveys. So I do all sorts of different iterations of surveys with thousands of people. And very often I was getting to numbers like 55% of adults would drink non-alcoholic beer with some regularity, which is a higher percentage than if I'd asked, do you drink alcoholic beer with regularity? So like, but here non-alcoholic beer was 0.3% of the beer market and alcoholic beer was 99.7% of the beer market. And I was just saying here, like, I think I'm the only one thinking about this absolutely enormous secret. And so that was like definitely a data driven insight. And then, but we didn't really see that play out in the world extremely fast. It was, even as we were launching, it was pushing the rock up the hill because it's great to be on the shelf at retailers. The problem is no one was walking to the non-alcoholic beer shelf looking for non-alcoholic beer because nothing had changed on that shelf in 50 years. So they had just stopped looking. It really required us like literally going and finding all those people in the world and bringing them into the retailer. So I sampled 75 events within the next 3 months after we launched, giving out hundreds of beers every weekend, talking to them about the brand, the beer, everything, and trying to form 1,000 true fans and getting people walking into the stores. And that was like a boulder starting to roll, but like the word of mouth was so fast around Connecticut where we launched, then Massachusetts and Maine was next, New Hampshire, and right up the coast. And then we kind of looped back around with Vermont, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. And all the forecasts were very low. So we had thought we'd built an enormous brewery. Like, when did I know we were really onto something? Like, we had thought this 10,000 foot, 5,000 barrel brewery we thought was enormous. And everyone told us we were dumb for building something that big. And all our distributors that we had opened up and all our retailers were giving us these forecasts that were very manageable to make. And expectations for the category were very low. But going into our first full summer on the market, we were just blowing through beer and absolutely out of stock so painfully to the point where it sounds silly, but like people were literally meeting our distributors' trucks in the parking lot at Whole Foods and Wegmans and stuff and getting the beer from the delivery person walking to the cash register. And it wasn't even like touching the warehouse, which it sounds like a great demand problem to have, except the retailer's shelf was empty 7 days a week. And it, so we were very painfully out of stock. And so we'd gone from, very ironically, a point where like we literally could not talk to someone about non-alcoholic beer to 10 months later, like everyone's yelling at us for not making enough non-alcoholic beer. And like there's this big outcry. And so that was a really painful growing pain. But I think that's when we knew we were really onto something and somewhat in big trouble too. Like we were not financed to build a brewery that was 10 times as big as that.
So you launched in May 2018, and you clearly had that boots on the ground mentality. And something else that you mentioned earlier is that when you launched, there weren't a lot of strong D2C presences in the beverage space, but that's something that you also launched as well. And that clearly has an impact on the sales side of the business. But how big of an effect do you think that also had from a brand building standpoint and continuing to build that relationship between athletic and your consumers?
I definitely, even though I come from like a very strong financial background, it was great with, you know, general financial statements and company analysis, like income statements and balance sheets. The granular operating model nature of it, I think I'd misfired a lot on the unit economics of D2C beer. You know, we were making very extremely expensive limited varieties, not our more affordable flagship beers, and then mailing them all over the country, which is extremely heavy and expensive. And so we were running this like pretty uneconomical D2C business that, you know, everyone was like, this is a waste of time. No one's ever going to order beer on the internet. Well, it actually turns out that non-alcoholic beer up to that point had been just basic lagers. It was a shelf of like five lagers with no marketing support. And Athletic Brewing came into the category and for the first time offered IPAs, golden ales, stouts, and then, you know, John Walker, our co-founder and COO, at that time it was like me, him, and two other people when I we launched e-commerce, and we would just be sitting in the office and be like, "Do we think we can make a sour beer or a radler?" Like, and we were like, "Oh, this summer, like, we should do like a fruit stand series." And like, we got a bunch of fruit from the like farmers market and made these like amazing sour beers. And so we, in that, in probably the first 12 months on the market, we probably launched 20 to 25 exciting new non-alcoholic beer flavors into a category that had never had any variety. And so we were going live every Monday at 5 p.m. with these offerings, and they started selling out so fast. And like at first, it was like things would sit up there a couple days, then it was a couple hours, and then things were selling out within 30 seconds of launch, like within a couple months. And so it was pretty funny to see how fast the D2C grew by word of mouth and just really basic social media. Like we were not really spending any money at all. I was like some posts, if I thought they were good, I would like put a little boost behind on Instagram, but it was not sophisticated whatsoever. And I think it was just like true resonance and word of mouth in the community that it was growing so fast. But yeah, I was just packing the boxes myself and shipping them. And originally it was we had one teammate in e-commerce, Derek, who is still with us, an incredible teammate who's grown with us the whole way, and Duntrell. And like we went from like I'd pack like 3 packages a day, then it would be 5 packages a day, 10 packages a day. All of a sudden I was coming in on Monday mornings and it was like 50 packages, and then all of a sudden it was like hundreds of packages a day. And now we're in the thousands of packages every day. But that e-commerce experience was really formative, where most beer launches are just where you locally have a distributor. And so like most New England craft brewers, when they launched, would launch in their surrounding area and be sold to people who could come and wait in line at the brewery and a very small radius of stores around it. Athletic Brewing was just posting to the whole country. And over time, our business has evolved to most of our beer being sold in stores. We still have a great e-commerce platform that supports the overall business, but it was very funny to be nationally available right from the jump. And also, really, that data was super interesting. We'd see that, wow, there's all these pockets in the country that were really resonating, and like we should be investing more in those areas. And for that reason, when we outgrew the brewery, we built our second brewery in San Diego, California, 3,000 miles away.
Athletic has obviously grown massively, but what I find so interesting and so cool is how you can build this massive brand, but the roots of it are kind of just this one person who had this own personal experience and problem. How has using yourself been an opportunity or a strength for building the brand's customer base and sort of using yourself as the persona for, as the guiding force for building the brand?
Well, I surely don't want to take credit for everything. I think, a lot of the original brand values and themes and concepts were like definitely extremely true to my life. And like we take a lot of care to remain an authentic brand. And but like a lot of our great teammates contribute to like what our brand is and how we interact with the community these days. And I'm very often reflecting with our co-founder just like how incredible it is who has walked in our door on this journey. Like the people who've helped us build Athletic are so special and so talented, and I absolutely love working with, and both like working really hard with, collaborating and challenging them, but also like laughing a lot, having a lot of fun, traveling together, sampling a lot of beers, doing silly things, having great team events. And so um, we have been really intentional about that team culture and community, both inside and outside our walls. So, um, and something John and I have always said is like from day one, we want to make sure that like what we say inside our walls is exactly what we say outside our walls. So we're never in a position as a company where we're like trying to get our story straight. And that makes living life really easy and easy to sleep at night when like the brand values are just like true and true. And I also was really intentional, like so like this brand is my life in many ways. It's like such a big part of it. And we not only wanted like elements of our personality to come through in the brand, so like healthy outdoors elements like that, charitable elements. But we wanted people as they experience athletic to like fall in love with athletic over and over again, find out things in the brand life. So we think about like peeling back the onion. And I wanted to be like people who like are experienced athletic for 2, 3, 4 years are finding out things that they love about the company way down their brand journey with us. So yeah, I've always kind of thought about it that way too.
Going deeper into the brand positioning and also from the communication, you've talked about how you don't see athletic as being competition, but more so a complement to the alcoholic category. And to take things a step further, and you've talked about this earlier with your own experience with alcohol, where you were solely just focused on your own personal relationship with alcohol. You're not demonizing alcohol, and I see it from my own, life and own experiences that it's not alcohol that is the focus, it's my relationship with it. So taking things a step forward, how important for the development of athletic brewing has it been? Uh, not necessarily being pro alcohol, but you're definitely not also anti alcohol.
I did look at like as I thought about the position of the company, the previous position on like designated driving and like corporate social responsibility. And like I really wanted to empower people to be able to make this choice and not be boxed into one of those situations. And so like I've always thought about like aspirational lifestyle. And I wanted it to be something that people would hold with the label out and be so excited and so proud to talk about. And like rather than like pouring it in a cup and hope no one saw, I wanted people to stand there with the label out and like hope someone asked about it and be like, oh, I discovered this and like this is why I drink it and I love this about them. And like, oh, did you know like they do this? Like they donate $2 million a year to trails and parks, like, and all these things. And so that was definitely really intentional. I definitely want to give credit to our creative and branding agency, Fairfolk, who I started working with in the month after I quit my job. So a friend I'd known from prior life reached out to me and was like, I know you're very financial and operations oriented, but like, if you need any help, like making athletic come to life in the real world, like let me know. And we had some conversations, and they've been our partners for 7+ years now and have like really helped with a lot of our brand identity stuff. But it's more importantly, like they work just so closely with me, getting to know like my vision for the brand, reading everything I'd ever put on paper about it, what values I wanted, where I thought we'd be going in 10 years. And then they helped me like pull that out of me and get it onto the cans. And like, so, and me and them have had so much fun over the years, like making that happen. And then a lot of our incredible, like, and so in athletic, like I'm not an expert in everything we do, and I'm very far from it. I try to stay on top of everything we're doing, but the experts around our company too are so talented in all their realms. And so I just feel very fortunate to be working with our team.
Drinking is obviously a very ritualistic experience, like we've spoken about. I'm curious to know, have you done any studies or have you seen any research on how drinking either athletics specifically or NA beers replicates the alcoholic experience from a psychological or emotional component?
So one thing we do hear over and over again is like the placebo effect, and I think that has to do with people drinking alcohol or drinking beer for 5,000 years, and like when people smell, I think it has to do with like other senses, like smelling the malt, smelling the hops, tasting the beer, um, relaxing and holding in your hand, being with friends and family. I think all those things signify like I'm relaxing and I'm socializing. And so there is a natural tendency that I think there's something way deeper in our senses that you, I do really relax when I have one of our beers. And then, um, like, so we've done a number of like very scientific studies on like food safety and quality in our company, but like not necessarily on like the effects of drinking our beer and things. But I can say we probably receive over 1 million customer emails a year. It's got to be, and in that we have a preponderance of evidence and testimonials of people sharing their experience with athletic and the positive impact it's had on their life, or the inclusion of family members who previously felt excluded from situations, or friends or family, like people who used to feel excluded now can participate socially, or all these stories about how like when someone in their family stopped drinking and they like lost these favorite moments and family connections they used to have, now they are able to do that again. um, or it could be people who are sick and can't drink alcohol. And this is like a semblance of normalcy and relaxing for them. We've heard that a lot. But also, like, just a ton of emails of people who are like, I've been struggling with drinking for 30 years and I want to have the full social experience, but like never knew how to make it happen. I couldn't cross the line. And um, those emails are like so rewarding for us. And so, yeah, it's not necessarily the most scientific, but it's like in terms of someone who has like left a career to do a career with more purpose, it is like it fuels my fire like I couldn't even possibly put to words. And receiving emails like that from our community makes it when, very often I'm working till 11, 12 at night. And if there was a button next to my computer that I could hit to get 6 more hours of work, like in my old career where I would do anything to shut down work for the day, the week, whatever. With athletic, I would bang that 6 more hours, please button all day if I could.
That's awesome to hear. And yeah, it really feels like you're not just selling a drink, you're selling somebody a certain type of energy and a certain type of identity that they want to embody. And you've spoke about this earlier before how this really wasn't an innovative part of the category. I mean, as much as athletic was about taking advantage of an underserved market and untapped potential, how much was it also about like, all right, we're going to make this thing and we're going to make it look really cool?
Yeah, I think that was an important part of it. So, um, our co-founder John is we didn't know each other at all when we started. We had met once, and as he was like the only person interested in working on this, and he just turned out to be like the most amazing person. So we have along the whole journey, we've had all these really interesting, formative conversations. And I remember very early us talking about like what's important in like building the long-term brand. And from a production standpoint, John was always like, quality is like if we build a great quality product, that's all we need to do. And I was like, I hate to sound simple or superficial, but I think the marketing is equally as important as great product. And we have to have both. And if either aren't totally there, it's not going to be what we want it to be. And I do truly think that marketing has been really important. We've been extremely fortunate to have people like JJ Watt and David Chang and Carly Kloss and Lance Armstrong. And um, I remember talking to JJ Watt early in the brand life, and he was someone who like really understood the brand proposition, and I was super fortunate to meet. And he's the nicest guy in the world. And he was like, "Bill, I don't know if I'm like ready to be like the face of non-alcoholic beer. I'm gonna like ruthlessly made fun of by like college bros all across the country." And he's like, "But I really get this. I want to be supportive." And all of a sudden, like he just started leaning into it and like posting on Instagram during college football Saturdays. And like it gets that much harder to make fun of non-alcoholic beer when you have one of the most elite athletes in the country talking about it in a positive way. And like so we've had all these moments that have kind of just snowballed. But I do think the marketing and the positioning ends up being just as important as the product quality, but you really don't have much if you don't have both, I don't think.
Getting deeper into your own personal wellness routine now, specifically talking about meditation. So you have a morning and an evening meditation routine. And in the morning, your meditation is more geared towards your goals and you repeat your long term goals 15 times. And then at night, your meditation is geared more towards gratitude. And you've said that the word dent is part of this meditation practice at night, where you're trying to put a positive dent in the world. And I'm a big proponent of visualizing what you want to happen in the future. The stronger vision that you have, the more I think you're able to create that reality. But for you, how has verbalizing what you want played a role in your life?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I, I've cobbled together my meditation routines from like a number of people I've heard describe their meditation routines, and like there's some things I've kept, there's some things I've passed off, and um, I generally try to. I forget exactly where I picked this up, but like try to think of it as like windshield wipers. Like if thoughts come into my head, I try to like wash them out while I'm meditating and stay focused. And exactly as you said, I do really try to visualize like my goals, my family, my impact on the world, especially in the morning, but I do that in both. And then I do think in this day and age, it's so easy to like, yeah, the reason I do gratitude at night is because so many things happen in the day. And I want to be thankful for the good things that are happening because so often I can be just locked in on what I need to improve on and what's next. And it's not only about the finish lines, it's about enjoying the whole journey along the way. And so, like being sure I recognize three great things that happen in that day has been really important. And I taking that out of my meditation practice to the real world too. Me and John are trying to like be really intentional as entrepreneurs. Like me and him connect a lot, either if we're in the same building in person, if we lived on opposite coasts for almost 3 years of this journey. So like we're regularly on the phone and like just trying to call him up like late in the day because I know every day is stressful and be like, hey, do you remember this morning? That was like pretty darn cool. Or like that was a huge milestone. And we'd make sure to like sit down and have a beer and just like celebrate a milestone. And we do a monthly team update call where we celebrate wins as a team too in front of the whole company. And so I think that gratitude and like celebrating wins along the journey is important because like if you're just putting everything into like the bag you get at the finish line, like, you know, um, I've heard people describe it as like climbing the ladder and looking in the bag to see what's there. And like what if there's nothing there? Like it's about the journey, not whatever's in that bag. And so, um, yeah, I think I also one thing about meditation I heard Jerry Seinfeld say really recently was like meditation is a trick where he's like I don't know what it is, I don't know how it works, but he's like it just fills up your mental tank and you realize it at like 1 p.m. Your mind is just going at a different level and it's smoother than it otherwise would have been, and that really resonated with me. And I think meditating and trying to be more big picture has helped me like smooth out the peaks and valleys of this entrepreneurial journey.
You clearly have a deep energy and passion behind your work. And something interesting that I heard you say previously is that in your old career, you would have been a loving father, but you don't think you would have been a purpose driven or energized father. And I think that's an interesting concept because the relationship between a parent and their child, that's, you know, the main focal point is obviously going to be love. But when it comes to energy and passion, I think that's a little bit of a different ballgame because those are things that you have to embody yourself and then that gets passed on to other people. And that had me thinking about, you know, the relationship with my dad where, you know, I think my dad is a very passionate person where he has, you know, his own work and his own projects where I can just view him sort of within his own environment and like through osmosis, then that energy gets passed on to me. And I know a quote that you like is also the world belongs to the energetic, Ralph Waldo Emerson. How do you think the energy behind your work has made you a better father?
Yeah, I think ultimately at the end of the day, words are words, and like children will emulate what they see done in the world. And so I'm really just trying to lead by example and be present as much as I can, and being really cognizant that, in 20 years when my son is grown up and out of the house, that like these are the moments I'll do anything to get back and be present in. So like I'm trying to really be present in the moments now and really get the most out of them, and enjoy them as much as I can, and be as impactful as I can on his life, because I know those moments are fleeting where um, I can only be that positive example for like him for the rest of his life so many times. My access to him is going to go down 90% in just a matter of like 15 years, probably. So,
I know you think The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho is the best book, and I think the best line is when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. How do you think the universe has conspired in your favor?
and basically every way, it, I, I think I'm actively out there, like, I'm not sitting on the couch hoping opportunities walk in the door and knock on my door and like say, "Hey, opportunities here, take advantage of it." Like I'm definitely out there working extremely hard, bringing that energy, but at the same time, it feels like just as equally, people are legitimately just knocking on our door. I can't tell you how many amazing teammates or contacts at Athletic Brewing have literally just knocked on the door, and I reflect on those moments and try to be sure to tell the teammates that like I'm not sure where you came from, why you decided to knock on the door, but I'm like so glad you did, and so I feel very fortunate to like have found this purpose and this journey, and I'm having a ton of fun doing it and loving the people I'm doing it with.
What does the future look like for Athletic in 2025 and beyond? What are the main priorities?
I mean, the great thing is, well, like me and John have always had really boring answers to that question. It's like we have a simple and very long-term focus. It's giving people great options, and we think non-alcoholic beer is going to grow and grow as a percentage of beer over the future, and basically just want to make our products. It will We want our beers to be like the most delightful and like rewarding part of people's days. And so that is so important. And then just have like a huge positive impact on the world by being available. And so from there, I think all of our goals and programs are scalable, and we're just be doing a lot more of what we've been doing.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yep. Yeah. And we're having a lot of fun doing it. So I'm just going to keep doing mostly the same stuff, but I will say we've got like 1,000 random great ideas from the team and ourselves every day. So there'll always be a lot of fun there, but like the big things will always be consistent.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing the future growth and success of Athletic and appreciate you for coming on the show, Bill.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tim. Really appreciate having me. It was a lot of fun.